Welcome one and all to this, the very first session of 2026. It is my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Te Hapuri Matihiko. I've been looking forward to this session for some weeks, and I have the privilege to have a main kōrero with two of my very close and trusted hoa, Kris Dempster-Rivett and also Amber Craig.
Kia ora koutou, tihei Māori ora. Ko ngā pai maunga o Tararoa rātou kore mutaka ko Aorangi ko ngā waka akupei ngā pou whakarai e tū nei e te pai o taku tirohanga. Ko roa mahanga te awa e riri nei, hei kawe e ngā kōrero tuku iho ki te moana. Ko wairarapa moana te puna maumahara, te manawa ora o te whenua. He uri au no wairarapa, ka heria taku nā kau ki ngā kōrero o nehera, ki ngā tapu wai o rātou mā i mua i au. I nei rā ka noho au i waihinga, ki ngā whenua e awhi nei i au i a ata i a pō. Ka mihi atu au oku tupuna ki mua i runga i te whenua tonu, ka mihi atu ki te whenua mō tōna atawhai o ngā whakamaumahara. Whakamarumaru. Ko au tēnei he tangata haere, he tangata noho, e kawe ana i te aroha mō te whenua, mō te tangata, mō ngā whakatupuranga kei te hiki mai. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Amber Craig tuku ingoa, kei kai whakarewa au ki te whare hangahanga me whakahangahanga. He kaupapa awaha, he kaupapa tuturu, he ara ki te mana motuhaki. Ia tātou ara, ia tātou Mātauranga Māori, mō ngā whakatupuranga kei te heki mai tēnā koutou katoa. For those that don't know me and my journey home, I whakapapa to the hora whenua and Wairarapa through more upoko Ngāti Kahananu ki Wairarapa, Rangitani o Wairarapa. But I've had a very public journey back home to my whenua. A lot of people have followed through what I like to call the old school Twitter crew. I currently live on the whenua Waihinga, which is otherwise known as Martinborough, mostly known for its vineyards, but we want to, as a whānau, ensure that no one forgets the rich history of our ancestors that lived here and their stories. I've spent my lifetime in technology, mostly thanks to my father, and have been a massive advocate for digital equality and equity. I now spend a lot of my time looking at innovative technology to restore our communities and build out safe spaces. And a lot of that is around housing for our whānau hapu and wider communities through the likes of Te Whare Hangahanga and Whakahangahanga. I have done a lot of, can't remember what the kaupapa is called, but digital marae mahi with Lee actually around the motu. And now I'm currently working through how to deliver that in an online platform to allow whānau to be able to consume it in their own way and own time as well, so we're not all having to be in the same space at the same time. And one of the things that I spend a lot of my time also doing is advocating for our waterways, especially here in the Wairarapa. We have Wairarapa Moana, but we have the Roa Mahanga Awa that travels through most of our region that ends up at Wairarapa Moana. And we are currently doing a lot of kaupapa at the moment through my part-time job as Rangitani o Wairarapa, is to think about how we take that data and then we are able to apply our Mātauranga Māori analytical mindset over it, but also our scientific mindset over it too. And then how we can help inform our plans for that. Yeah, along with a whole bunch of other stuff and how we can locally deploy AI, because for me, a massive impact with technology is the environmental impacts that it has on not just our community here in the Wairarapa or in New Zealand, but also our other iwi takitaki that are overseas as well. Like, we don't want to impact them and just pass the buck. So yeah, I'll leave it an extra minute so that Kris can have his 6 minutes.
Yeah, because he needs it, eh? Ka pai e te tuahine ngā mihi ki a koe. Handing over the rākau kōrero to you, Brother Kris. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Amber. How do I follow that, you know? Ko Kris toku ingoa uri au Ngāti Mania poto nā pohi no Snells Beach ahau. currently, I guess I've gone back to the future. No, I'm not Marty McFly, and Lee is not Doc Brown, but after a bit of a stint in the corporate world with Chorus, and I see some of my Chorus whānau on here today. Good to see you. I'm back into the community organisation, so Digital Future Aotearoa, which has Recycle a Device, and Otatahi Outreach at Code Club Aotearoa. There's one portai. Back up to Whangarei and Tautukaro with the Tautukaro Education Trust, where we support whānau with interest-free micropayments for Chromebooks, etc. And then obviously with DECA, Digital Equity Coalition Aotearoa, I still have a handover in that space as well, working on a couple of different projects. One of the projects I'm most excited about for this year is a Tonga gift from Ali Archer with her Kaunuku Digital Equity Framework has been gifted over to DECA, and for myself, it's looking at how we can turn this academic paper thesis into a community toolkit that community organisations can pick up and use in their organisations in lieu of not having any census data coming and things like that. So plus a few other things with Lee, obviously, that we're doing from time to time, which is always good, and a lot of sports coaching, unfortunately, of my children. So the winter is coming. The winter is coming, and that means not a lot of free evenings and weekends coming up. But yeah, happy to be here today with Lee and Amber, and look forward to the discussion. Kia ora.
Kia ora kōrua, ngā mihi kia kōrua. Yeah, and I guess the real day jobs for all three of us is as kaitiaki of our tamariki, also known as parents. Hey, coming back to you, Amber, please. Going to go straight to it. What are the biggest challenges you're seeing out there in your community at the moment? Share some of your kōrero with us, please.
So for me, I kind of just jotted some notes down over the past few weeks that we've been discussing this. Really, for me, the first thing is infrastructure. So I drive between Carterton and Martinborough, and on that back road, there's barely any coverage. So you can't even make a call out to, organise stuff with your whānau. You can't even, because a lot of the Wairarapa, it's half an hour to an hour plus drive to go anywhere, especially when you're talking about South Wairarapa towards Masterton. And so that good hour driving there or back actually takes a lot of your time away from you. And when you've got your tamariki in the car and that type of thing, it's a way to be able to, all the ideas come to your mind. So being able to organise and coordinate battle plans when we're talking about activism for our waterways, or coming up with a solution or a plan for some of our whānau. We don't actually have the coverage. We were able to sit down and utilise some of these tools. A lot of the places that I have lived, this is no shame, but I'm currently on 2 degrees and I can barely get a coverage going between Carterton and Greytown, like driving between towns. So even when you're talking about our main towns, there's barely any coverage to be able to support a lot of what we're trying to do. There is fibre down the main road, but with a lot of the plans, there is the cost of those plans. So again, cost is a massive barrier for a lot of our whānau as well, especially when we're talking about a cost of living crisis, talking about a housing crisis, and then you're asking them to pay for internet on top of all of that. So at the end of the day, feeding our tamariki, making sure we can have a house is our main priority. Get them to kura before we can connect to the internet and be able to try and learn these cool things. I'm just going to keep going and then tell me when to stop, or if I need to pass over to Kris. Another one for us is also cultural barriers. So a lot of what I focus a lot of my mahi on is how do we do technology in our way. So there's the Silicon Valley way, and that tends to be often free, with our whānau being the consumers. And so how do we do it in our way where we're telling our stories, and it's built from a te ao Māori concept and before engaging in these tools, and that helps to cross that divide as well in terms of when we're talking about digital equity, because if our whānau can't see themselves in it, they're not going to want to do it, or they're then being blind consumers, and so then we're losing them to the what is mana motuhaki, what is our tino rangatiratanga, when we're trying to teach them about te ao. The world of te ao matahiko for Māori is quite different to what I believe Silicon Valley is pumping out at the moment, which is very harmful and will actually degrade our future generations, and will sign them up for stuff that they don't necessarily have a choice in. The likes of the Google glasses and whatever else is coming out, the Meta glasses, it was Google glasses about like 5-6 years ago, and then no one socially liked it. So now they've got Meta glasses. So all those types of things help push that digital divide, I believe. Yeah. There's also education to me, but I'll leave Kris to have some kōrero because I could rant all day.
Yeah, thanks, sis, and appreciate those whakaaro. Kris, kei a koe?
Oh, haven't left much there, Amber, but just like to double down, triple down, quadruple down. We are in a cost of living crisis, so the social cost of living has increased. And if we think about the digital divide, it used to be a technical access thing, and now it's an education piece. We're innovating faster than we can keep up with the education process. Way I can put it into perspective, it's like sending our people out to build a road with a shovel whilst the other group have a big digger that can excavate a whole lot of soil. And to add more salt to that wound, it's usually a battery-powered one against the diesel one. So, we're looking at a divide that's happening by not just the technical or access to it or affordability, it's an education piece as well, and I guess we've got to look at where it starts from. If we're not getting that education into the digital realm at an early age primary school, and we're hoping that they're going to get it at NCEA, it's often not likely the case, and there's lots of reasons for that. It's not through desire. Might be through kura in schools who don't have that technical knowledge for a kaiako to deliver that content in that space. And I'm not just talking digital technologies, I'm talking engineering, mathematics, the sciences, all of those sort of subjects that require a specialism or experts in that area to, uncover or show our tamariki and rangatahi, what is possible in that space. So you're right, the education piece is massive for me, and we talk about the tech pipeline a lot and how leaky it is, and we've been talking about it for years, and I think we had the same conversation 5 or 6 years ago about it, and we still get people trying to solve the whole pipeline, and I think that's a big error, because there are groups who already are doing mahi in that space that are experts in the education piece. How do we sort of support that next link in the chain to the left or the right, rather than going, I need to solve the whole thing, because that's always going to be a challenge. So education, pathways to employment, infrastructure, access to those services. I guess I look at us as, if we looked at the Māori economy, the Māori economy to me is Māori owning the infrastructure, Māori owning the service providers, and that circular Māori economy that exists there. So I'll kind of come at it from a different viewpoint of, we've got this number of what the Māori economy is worth. Great. That's kind of a bit of export of the Māori economy to non-Māori organisations. So, what does that look like as a circular economy for Māori in that space?
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, awesome insight, awesome whakaaro, by the way. For those of us that are working in the, I guess, digital equity, digital inclusion space at the minute, and there's a few of you on this call, we've got this, some of this kōrero on repeat, and that's all good, because I believe through repetition, it really, hopefully the message gets through to those that need to receive these important messages. But we talk about the digital divide. For those that are not familiar with digital divide. Essentially, there's three main, I guess, key challenges or barriers that are presented with the digital divide, and that's access to affordable internet connectivity, that's digital literacy skill sets or skilling and training, and the last one is access to affordable computing equipment. I'm not talking about a phone, but an actual computer, right? So these are things that we three and others on this call as well. We live and breathe this mahi. But what I would say is that I'm kind of on that, trying to address the affordable internet connectivity kind of challenge, and you would see, and I'm not promoting this kaupapa, but it certainly is an option for those whānau that need access to affordable fast fiber internet. Okay, it's not skinny, it's not wireless, it's not, it's actual fiber internet in the ground that comes into your house. So our net is the solution that we've come up with to try and hopefully alleviate access to affordable internet connectivity. And the really cool thing is that Amber mentioned the Marae digital connectivity mahi that we did about 3 or 4 years ago when we were going around the motu, helping to upskill our marae trustees, most of whom were kaumātua or elderly, and really just trying to give them, or educating them, I should say, on the skills that they need to basically operate in a digital world, right? An increasingly digital world. So, but one of the seeds that was planted all those years ago has now become our net. So marae and marae trustees would say to us, that's to us personally, can we just buy internet from you fellas? And we're like, no, because we're not internet service provider. But 4 years of toil and mahi, and we've all been, there's many of us on this call today that have been a part of this journey. We now have created this simple solution that will provide access to whānau that can't normally afford internet connection, and there's many. There's 130,000 households today that don't have internet to their house. Anyway, I digress a little, but it is kind of just talking about some of the mahi that I'm involved with personally, in terms of trying to alleviate one of those main challenges that the digital divide presents us with. Now, going back to our part-time. Really keen to hear from you both about your visioning and your aspiration for what's ahead. So, Anne, just coming back to you, can you share some of your hopes and dreams, sort of into the future, maybe the next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years? What does that look like for you?
I'll just make a final point on the previous one because it will lead into my visioning. So it's becoming increasingly more and more that it is a privilege to be able to be ethical within the technology world. So it's a privilege to be able to be private within the ethical, within the technology world as well. So you need money to be able to make sure that your data isn't being sold so that you can sign up for a product per se. But if you're poor, you can't afford that. And so you get all of your data taken away. And so it's kind of increasing and pushing behaviours that whānau wouldn't necessarily get to make if they had an informed choice and it wasn't about money at the end of the day. But for me, that sort of leads me into my envisioning and aspirations around, well, actually, how do we do things? So a lot of our kaupapa, we always start with what are we trying to do in a general theme sense, and then look at the atua and then allow that atua to shape how we would then move forward. We don't like to come up with solutions at the end of the day because you might be missing a completely different picture that if you didn't go on that hekoi and that haerenga with your atua and your tupuna, that you would end up in a completely different kaupapa. So that's what's happened with Te Whare Hangahanga. We definitely let a lot of our kaumātua guide a lot of the conversations about it. Was a lot of conversations with whānau about what they're struggling with in terms of housing on the ground. But say in terms of the waterways, a lot of our conversations have been, well, actually whānau just want to collect their data about what they're seeing on the waterways, and then we want to store it on our own whenua. It's as simple as that. And so then if we're wanting to be able to process that data in near real time and be able to pull out insights, that might mean that we deploy AI onto our own servers that's run and managed potentially via solar to help cool it down. But, we've actually got our own data servers, our own data being stored on our whenua here then if you start to look at it, well, if we do that at Kohonui Marae, and we do that at Papawai Marae, and we do that at Te Oriori and Hiranui o Rangi, then we can start to connect that so that as a region within the Wairarapa, we're starting to share our data in a more informed way. So the vision and aspiration for me is always like, how are we helping to move towards tino rangatiratanga and the restoration of that? How are we looking at mana motuhake? How are we allowing whānau to make informed decisions around our technology without being cost as a barrier? You know, so if they're signing up to Google Docs and using that all the time, but they know that they're giving their data away, there is no other option for them. So if we actually build a tool where they could do that back home and be able to sign up, and even whānau who don't live here are able to sign up to this tool and pay for it, then that might be an option for them to be able to do. So how do we just make it easy and simple for whānau to just sign up and do it? Because they don't want to necessarily want to become developers to be able to just store a piece of data. They just want it to be easy, usable, free as much as possible, and to help guide them in doing the right thing.
Yeah. Before I hand it over to Kris, thank you, Rehua. That was amazing insight and amazing whakaaro. I've just been sitting here listening to you, and I realized that I've had the privilege, and very grateful, therefore, to have had these conversations with you before, and it's really cool for us to be able to hear you saying these things, because obviously there will be people in this virtual room that probably haven't heard of these perspectives or even these the lens that you look at things, which is always refreshing for me, and I really appreciate the time that you take to share your Mātauranga. So thank you. Kris, what do you see in your dreams? What do they look like?
I don't want to curse it just yet, but I think it's the Warriors' year this year. Just put it out there, you know, just every year.
Got it in there, bro. Yeah.
Got it in there. I guess for me, it's just, I guess I won't look 5 years out. The next 2 years will do for now. You know, bringing the technology back down into the classroom and education opportunities in the classroom is a big one for me. How we get it there, how we support the kaiako and the kura in the schools with that, and those challenges there around, you know, bringing experts into the classroom or into the resources that are shared into that space. That's probably a big one for me anyway. And I'll echo just what Amber said around the data sovereignty and the sovereignty of all of our data, and going into the space is another big piece that I am no expert in, but it's great to see other people diving into that space and leading in that space as well for us. I guess the big one is, look, we've got challenges at the moment with our environment, financial, the money ecosystem, philanthropic funding for a lot of our community groups, not-for-profits, charities, etc. Navigating those financial challenges is probably a big part of that, which is, I guess, why I feel pulled to go back into that space and try to support those organisations as best I can in there, whilst trying to do good and support the other digital equity and digital inclusion kaupapa that exist. I guess the third part of that is how do we collect that information in a safe and trusting way in lieu of no census data. How do we sort of have enough information to share that there actually is a divide and it is getting bigger, and here is what it looks like in our regions and in our isolated regions. So those are the big ones for me, and I guess we all would aspire to not be in this space is probably the biggest call of all, but I feel, you know, we're at a point where there is opportunity, you know, for us to do more. I guess what doing more looks like looks very different for each person and every organisation there. I guess for me it's how do we share that journey and what we're all sort of traversing at the moment back into the wider community. so that I guess we've got these shared learnings, we can go back to them in the future, or our future we can be future ancestors, and our tamariki and rangatahi can go back and look at the things that we traversed and have that space there for them.
And thank you, Ihoa. And I think just to add to the discussion, we all know that digital technology or technology can be a lever for enablement, for empowerment. But it can also have an adverse effect if our people don't have access to technology, certainly don't have the digital literacy skills to be able to just exist, like merely exist in an increasingly digital world. And I should mention that Y3311, the treaty claim, it speaks to the heart of that challenge in terms of digital equity for Māori communities. So if you haven't checked that out yet, then you probably should, and I'll chuck a link in the chat shortly. Coming back to the point of what I'm saying, I think in my vision, and I've had this one for a couple of years now, but I see our marae becoming digital community hubs, not just for Māori and hapu whānau, but for all. And I see that marae becoming places of enterprise, of mahi, of co-working, of training, digital literacy, upskilling, all of these amazing things that they could be. And that in itself is a positive lever in terms of how we leverage and utilize digital technology. So that's the first thing. And secondly, creating solutions that are Mātauranga informed, that are informed by our ancestors, if you will, and certainly all of the work that we do as collective in terms of addressing these challenges that the digital divide poses for not just for our communities, but for all lower socio-economic whānau and households. So we know that Indigenous peoples have the attributes and characteristics and ancestral knowledge to create solutions that will solve problems for all, not just for ourselves, but for all humanity. So I think, that's not too far off. The third thing I will add is, how do we extend our Indigenous global networks to collaborate with our whānau across the Pacific Ocean, first and foremost? Kris and I just recently went on a digital equity delegation trip, self-organized, self-funded, a couple of weeks ago, and it was amazing. So how do we extend on that mahi as a community of digital equity advocates and practitioners, and then connect up and work collaboratively with other Indigenous communities around the world? It's all there, whānau, like all the bits are there. We just need to connect them up, and we will become a stronger collective, if you will. So I guess I'll just leave my thoughts there. I've got another question, and then I'm going to chuck it to the audience for any pātai. If you haven't already put any questions into the chat, please do. This is a really it's current and it's relevant, and I just snuck it in there at our questions this morning. I'm going to put it to either of you, so whoever wants to answer it first, please do. The question is, how do we survive in the current and possibly next term coalition government? How do we survive? I know how much mahi is involved. I know how much I have put into my mahi in terms of digital equity for our peoples and our communities. What do you two think?
Oh, I'm happy to go first, but for me, really, it's about us remembering that we don't need the government. I think for me, it's around how do we set up and decouple ourselves from the government. We don't need their funding either. And I've probably a prime example that time and time again, we've managed to crowdfund for our land back. We've managed to crowdfund for a CNC router. If you can tell the story and you can show the vision, then whānau are wanting to come on that journey. And you will be surprised what a community can do together. If it's $100 each, we were able to raise 100,000 to be able to do Te Whare Hangahanga. We had over 380 shareholders who wanted to be part of that journey. Like, that's the power of community, and if we can tell the story and educate. A couple of things as well, though, would be, are you doing it with the community or are you doing it for them? Because those are two separate things as well. So making sure that we've got all these organizations that do digital equity, are they doing the same thing? Or how could they, if they're doing separate different things, which is kei te pai, how are they delivering value for the whānau on the ground that need it the most? We don't have time to muck around, especially if this government's in for another term, because it's literally going to kill us on the ground with our whānau in terms of rural communities. We're already seeing the struggle with the cost issues. We're already seeing the problems with the homing issues, housing, our job issues. We're having whānau that are not able to. I just read on Blue Sky, someone had been trying to get a new job for 18 months and still didn't even get any callbacks. Like, we're in just a different time right now. And I think as well that global community you were talking about, Leah, is really, really important as well, because our Indigenous whānau overseas, our Black American community as well, you know, they are feeling it as well. And they are, I absolutely believe we have the answers because our tupuna gave us solutions already. And how we bring them through into this modern world is for us to be able to work through. And so we have solutions that even our wider communities need us to solve, because we have a better way forward, rather than just chucking money in it and treating it like capitalism. Just off the top of my head is a few things.
Nice one. Nice one, sis. Kris, what are your thoughts here? What? Was Fraser? Can't wait. I think it's going to take a lot of. Officially, I agree with what you've said, Amber. That's ultimately where we need to end up, is to decouple from government across the board, not just in the realm that we operate in, but just across the board. And I think with that will come true, of course, mana motuhake and of course sovereignty. I think we're already building, or at least thinking about building, our own sovereign solutions. And we heard a bit of this already in our little haringa to Hawaii just recently. And no doubt there are conversations about this very thing, about sovereign systems, sovereign cloud, sovereign AI, so on and so on and so on. And it's really just about how do we support each other as Indigenous communities, Indigenous peoples, to be able to build these things so that we can then benefit as a collective, and ultimately humanity can then benefit from these things that we create as well. So 100% agree with that. And I think with further relationship building with our whānau across the Pacific Ocean in particular, and Indigenous communities globally, I think some amazing knowledge and amazing, I'll call them solutions, will come from that collectivism. So I'm looking forward to that. Kris, I don't know if you've joined us yet. Oh, Amber, go. You go.
I just have another thing as well. So it's really important. We've seen with this government, especially over the past term, that they've really centralized things. And I think that is the complete opposite of what we all know, is it needs to be community ground up. That would be beneficial for I don't really want to say minorities, but for everyone, essentially, that we're building with everyone in mind, and it's inclusive for everyone from the ground up. That means that we have to have decentralized solutions, and that we might have a bit of a strategy that sits over top and we can all collectively benefit from stuff. But it really needs to work for people on the ground first.
Yeah, nice. Kris, did you have anything to add from your mobile phone? How do we survive? How do we survive?
Yeah, they must have been listening to my computer. It's gone kaputski. I just agree with what Eva said. Look, I'll just run with that. But hey, look, I think she's right. You know, the fragmented nature of the work that we do, different communities, different organizations, is something that I've thought about for a long time. I guess we know that the centralized nature of this government and what they're doing isn't useful and creates a whole lot more barriers for around access and the changes to who they're supporting and things like that. So yeah, let's make it one term.
Yeah, and which means vote whānau and ask your whānau to vote and your hapu and your marae to vote ne. I think just to add to that in terms of governments, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, that's good because I've got something to say. So
Good.
my only thing is like,
Awesome.
even if it is one term, we still got to remember to decouple from the government. So they need to come and join us on our terms rather than us keep asking for funds and to keep trying to, if they're not on the kaupapa e te whānau, then they need to get off the bus because this bus has already left the station. So regardless of whether it's a left or a right, we're for our communities regardless.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing about advocacy, which we all do as well, right? It's not just lobbying, but it's advocating for these challenges that our people and communities face. And without that voice, we'll just go unheard until such time as we've decoupled from the government and so on and so forth. I think there's an opportunity here through this Indigenous Global Network, to be able to create our own governance, if that's what I hate the word governance, but anyway, you know what I mean, where we come together and we can start self-determining on a global scale. And so that really excites me, to be honest. But I think, still got to do the mahi, still got to turn up, still got to yell and have a voice. We do this all day, every day. And again, just harking back to that treaty claim, if you haven't had a look at it, please do, because there's some key inequities that are highlighted in Y3311. Just a very quick update on that whānau, because I know this will be quite interesting to all, and it's something that I already knew was gonna happen when I filed that treaty claim. But the latest update on the treaty claim is that the tribunal has said we might get a day in court or hearing in the year 2032, between the year 2032 and 2035. So that kind of let you know that we're in for the long haul net, but hey, nothing that we didn't already know, right? So with that whānau, I would love to hear any questions from the floor that we might have. Feel free to unmute your microphone and ask away, and we'll do our best to respond. So I invite you to ask questions, and whilst you're thinking about that, I'm going to check the chat, and just make sure we haven't missed any questions. Ka pai, kia ora. Awesome. Kōrero in the chat too. Ka pai, Shan.
Kia ora, Lee.
Kia ora, Prish. Kia ora.
Aroha mai tino heo hau tēnei mōku. This is a completely new world for me. And as you know, I'm doing some mahi in this space and trying to get an understanding of what the issues are and therefore how some players can support a response. So really interested in the infrastructure piece that I think both Amber and Kris spoke about. And it sounds like, very naive, sounds like it requires a lot of capital investment to get that level of connectivity and infrastructure support. And Māori aren't necessarily the only solution, but how could we get infrastructure support in those places like the Wairarapa that Amber spoke about, where connectivity drops in and out? What does that look like? Who needs to come to the party? What kind of collaboration is required? And who's best placed to lead that?
Yeah, nice. Beautiful question. Amber, do you have anything to start us with?
I have a lot of thoughts on this because this is what I sit up at night at 3 a.m. when my daughter wakes me up in the morning. So I guess for me, when we're thinking about commercial organizations doing this, that's quite a different kaupapa to when I think about how our whānau would do it. So a lot of this as well, we've been talking about just to see where it's come from, digitizing our manuscripts. So actually we've been talking about storing that within our marae, and that actually maybe we create a wireless network, a Wi-Fi within our area, our rohi, for whānau to connect back, but it's locked down, so you're not on the internet per se. There's nothing to say as well that if my whānau is sitting on one side of that network and I'm on the other, that maybe to help us remove that digital divide a bit, that we could leverage off that closed wireless network to be able to communicate with each other. So I guess there are some ways for us to be able to do it on a local level, by doing our own solutions if we're just given the opportunity to say. Yes, there is some infrastructure that there would be some actual capital costs for that, but it might be a template that we could replicate around the motu for different whānau if that's something that we could do. The cool thing about that is it actually feeds into our kaumātua conversations of when they say come home, you actually come home and you get access to your manuscripts. You might need to have a bit of a wānanga, but you get free access to all of them. They're all on this drive, and you don't have to worry about where this book's at, what whānau's taken that, are the pages too deteriorated to be able to go through those puka. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can solve if we kind of just talk to whānau, kaumātua first and think about that might work for, say, Papawai, but it might be quite different. They might have a different focus at a different marae, different area. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Kris, you're an infrastructure guy more recently. Thoughts?
Yeah, good discussion. I think the big thing I'll say in that space, and I think Emma brought it up, a reliance on government funding or procurement is not sustainable. So I think when you go into those spaces around partnering on infrastructure projects or service projects, what does sustainability look like? And I guess coming from the point of view of whānau, who are the end users, that is the key focus, and I think the sustainability question always is with government funding, how long will this last? And I guess in the commercial space, it's how long will you stay on the waka with us as we sort of traverse, I guess, tricky waters where sometimes, it is not profit or there's not enough profit or enough revenue to maintain that. So sustainability and longevity and I guess resilience in that space. Being a Warriors fan, it's one of our key attributes, resilience, 30 years. So,
Nice. And you snuck it in there a second time. You're on a roll. Hey, my thoughts on that question, it's a very good question, Precious, thank you. Is that... All right, let me start my response with iwi. Because I know you touched on the iwi chairs forum in the chat. It reminded me that Katie did a little presentation, might have been last Waitangi Day or the one before, to the iwi chairs forum on just state of the nation in terms of Māori Digitech and also Te Hawhiri Matihiko as a community that's leading a lot of the efforts in this community. So that was a pretty milestone event, I would say. And then from that, there have been some of those iwi chair leaders who have kind of like, oh, cool, oh, well, this is happening, so let's continue the conversation. So I think we need to circle back to that at some point and really just keep pushing home what we're talking about, all of these challenges that we're facing, not just in terms of digital equity and digital inclusion, but the state of the nation and what's happening at the moment in our community, all of the work streams that are happening. I should mention that we are planning to, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, Katie, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're looking to plan for an Indigenous Innovation Summit at the end of this year. Dates to be advised, location to be advised. But what that's about is bringing us all together in one space and putting our matanga in front of our people, and they're sharing all of the work, the amazing work that they're doing at the moment, with sort of an expo, Pakehi Expo alongside it. So it's going to be the best thing since forever. So we will look to be promoting that as soon as we've locked in those details. So just a bit of a sneak heads up there. So that's the first thing. But I also think that we as a collective, as a community, need to talk about these things and seed these things more with our hapu, with our marae, and also with our iwi. Because I can say this, and I will say it, honestly, most of our iwi are risk averse to anything to do with digital and technology. And that's not because they don't want to invest or they don't want to support, it's because of the lack of information, education, and understanding of what the challenges that face us. But on the flip side of that, what are the opportunities? Because we know the future of work is digital and technology. So again, coming back to that question, how can you support? And this is a question that I'm going to pose to both Amber and Kris as a closing question. How can people, organizations, Pākehī get involved to support and help with our efforts that we've just talked about now, like today? How can people get behind it? How can they support? How can they help? So whilst you're thinking about your responses, coming back to iwi, yeah, I just think there needs to be a little bit more conversation and wānanga on these things in the iwi kind of realm, so that creates better understanding, and then they understand that on top, in addition to that, what the opportunities and challenges are that we face as a people. Yeah, Amber?
I just wanted to make a comment on the iwi thing, because I actually work for an iwi and I'm heavily involved in iwi. But PSGs are very risk averse because that's the way that the government has set them up to be. Iwi ruranga tend to be less so, but also they're also trying to feed, house, and culturally respond to the threat of not having te reo and other things, a whole bunch of our tikanga coming back. So then when we add, it's a bit like that conversation of when whānau have to can't afford housing, can't afford food, can't afford a whole bunch of other things, and then you add tech on top, it just seems like this extra thing. And I tend to be labelled as I'm the tech support person at my iwi, even though that's not even my day job. I'm in Taiao. So like, but that's just because I'm the young person supposedly that the kaumātua would turn to. So although I'm not that young anymore, so I've told them to get better rangatahi. So I think that's just in the concept of what our iwi are having to fight on top of. And so sometimes it actually takes some of us on the ground who are like, yeah, I've got that skill set. Yeah, we've got a bunch of us. Yeah, we've told the story as well. So I think it always comes back down to storytelling and what we're trying to sell and what we're trying to share the vision of, and that it's not just for our whānau, it's also for the wider community that come along and benefit too. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to add on the iwi space. But in terms of what was your question, Lee, around that we're finishing out with?
Yeah, how do people get behind us? How do they get behind the efforts of the collective of us as individuals and all of our various kaupapa? What's some really low-hanging fruit that our people online today especially can get behind and help and support?
Oh, if there's someone who resonates with you, just go and have a coffee with them. Just have a chat. Well, if I want to do this kaupapa in this area, and like if you came to me and said, I want to do this kaupapa in Waikato, I would say, go talk to Lee. Or, you know, because usually us Māori tech people, we know each other, usually. Or we'll go, I've never heard of that person, but maybe ask Lee, and he might have heard of them. So between us collectively, Māori tech is not that big. But just have a conversation. It's really where it all starts, and that will start to feed you into hopefully the right circles or the people who are on the ground moving and shaking and getting shit done.
Yeah, nice. And probably add to that, call to action to join the Circle community platform for Te Hapori Mati Hiko te whānau. Pretty easy. Just go to the website, find the members join page, and then join the Circle community if you haven't already done so. And that's where we have a lot of conversations, and we can start new conversations as well. Ne? Kris, you got anything to close us out with?
Yeah, I just agree. The big thing is sharing the good shit that's happening. That's the big one, eh? Like, you only know what you know, and you only know who you hear it from. So if your circles don't align, or a circle doesn't align in a space where we've got a sphere of influence or contact, you don't know about it. And I think that's the big one is, you know, we all have relationships and connections into spaces, corporate, non-corporate, community groups and things like that. And I guess it's just sharing what's actually working out there in the communities. And I think that's a big one for me is there's a lot of good stuff going on that doesn't really get the light of day. And that's because a lot of time we might not want it to get the light of day because we're just doing the mahi and doing what's best for our community. So, you know, we can be very protective and that's good in some sense. But it also creates opportunity for duplication and dare I say it, assimilation of some of the stuff that we're doing in our communities. And I think I'll just direct them to, like Amber said, people in that area doing the work and, getting behind those initiatives, those programs, those community groups.
Yeah, thank you, Kōrero. And I think there's a couple of questions that I might just close us out with that have popped through in the channel. I'll just do my best to respond to those. Kia ora, Andrew. It's good to see you online today. Yeah, I agree. I'm listening to a lot of Indigenous and Māori advocates and voices on the subject of data governance and sovereignty in the realm of AI. And you're right, there seems to be a lot more. Kōrero should mention Dr. Kaitiana Tauru as one of our probably most published and foremost voices on that very subject. But I should say, it's not a response, but I have kind of wrangled and facilitated with the help of Kris, what we're calling a Māori AI kind of wānanga or collective, and it's really just for us to start drafting or aspiring to a vision statement. So that's the very beginning, and some of you are on this co-op at the moment, but that's really just coming out of concern for our people on the ground, particularly communities, our whānau hapu marae, who are being swept away by this thing we call the AI divide. It's just taking you whether you like it or not, right? So we're just, again, collectivizing and bringing together a koropu or community of Māori AI experts, of Māori AI doers to help vision some of that aspiration, I guess. So that's a little mention of that piece of work, and it's ongoing and it's very exciting, I must say. Kaitiana, just in terms of data and data centers, data sovereignty, I have to say there's a lot of conversation. You're probably party to some of those conversations as well, on what that looks like for us. So what does sovereign cloud look like? What does sovereign AI look like? What does, sovereign file and back office and office, kind of tools look like? And so all of these things that we know we need to create to enable us to be sovereign and create our own self-determine our own future in terms of this digital realm that is increasing, especially with the advent of AI, which is just, it's evolving at an exponential rate, and it's quite concerning. So not an answer, but I'm definitely hearing a lot of conversations on that very thing, and I would love to hear more about your insights and experiences in that space as well, Ehua. And so I think, just finishing with Precious's question or more of a query around infrastructure partnering with iwi. I think we should mention Tuatea as a lever or as an organization that's doing a lot of work in the realm of spectrum, 5G, 6G, and also all of those technologies. So what part does that organization play in terms of partnering with either government or with iwi? I'm not sure. I'm not part of that organization, but we should mention that they are in the landscape in terms of what's happening out there. So Tuatea, if you haven't checked them out, please do. We have members that work over at Tuatea, so that's how our connection, and we maintain quite a strong, relationship partnership with Tuatea as well, having sponsored our Mati Hiko Awards in the past. And I think I've got 1 minute over, so I'm just gonna close it there. All right, ka pai. Thank you very much to all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We hope that you've got something, some nuggets or some gold from this kōrero today. I'm really grateful and appreciative to my two good friends, Amber Craig and also Kris Dempster-Rivett, for their time today. I think we've offered some pretty interesting insights, and also hopefully some provocation for us all to take away from this from this hui topa, and maybe just start thinking about some of the things that we've shared with you today.